Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Kayla Agnes Limoso Ramirez, a fourth year political science student from West Visayas State University. Of course, my field of interest is related to indigenous and culture, especially here in Panay. Currently, I'm also involved in projects. I'm also a research assistant of Dr. Alicia P. Magos. So this is for Telling Harvest, the Tarot ritual of Anilaw and Barotac Viejo Iloilo Ate communities.
Kyla, can we ask you to click the
All
present
right.
slide? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So first, this is the Panay indigenous people. So in Panay, we have the two indigenous people. We have the Ati and the Panay Bukidnon. Of course, the Ati are the Negrito stock in the Philippines, and they are the indigenous community that also possess rich culture of language, customs, and traditions. Of course, their belief in the natural world merges with the life world is also demonstrated in their life cycle rituals and social practices. Another indigenous group in Panay is also the Panay Bukidnon, who are also known as the Tumandok. They are the indigenous community found in the interior and upland parts of central Panay. So for our Ati settlements, as documented from the past until the present as well, in various resources, large Ati settlements are found in Nagbana, Barotac Viejo in Iloilo. There is also one in Hamtik in Antique. There are also settlements or communities located in Malay, in Aklan. There are settlements found in Nilaw, Aniway, Bunao, Kalinog, San Enrique, Cabanatuan, Maasin, San Dionisio, and Iloilo City. There are also some in Libertad and Davao Antique, Ilibon, Bahay Aklan, Dumaraw, and Dumalag, and Tapaz and Capiz, and also in the island of Guimaras. So our Ati culture and beliefs and practices, they have these nomadic culture that enable them to live in different environmental situations where they chose settlements with easy access to abundant resources, whether it may be in the land, fresh water, salt water, or even in the forest. Hence, this nomadic culture led them to easily build houses or traditional Ati settlements with simple low hut built with cogon, bamboo, and coconut leaves without any furniture for Ati families to simply sleep on the floor. Of course, the one of the material cultures as well is that the livelihood and economic survival of our Ati communities in Panay are characterized through trapping, hunting, fishing, bartering, and especially farming and handicrafts. They also have this belief that they base their veneration, they have this veneration on ancestors as their natural world merges with the life world. Of course, they have this reverence and observance of the spirits such as the Taglogar, which are also called as the environmental spirits in their communities. Of course, our Ati communities also traditionally consult with the communities Babaylan in the prevention of some ailments. There are some life cycle rituals or social practices through in the example of Luwas, Kantang, and Dededede for the burial rituals. There are some in the dances such as Sinulog for marriage and then Pandang Pandang for merrymaking. And of course, which is a practice that remains today, is the practice of the kaingin or the kaingin system, which is the slash and burn agriculture. The Anilaw and the Nagpana Ati communities is situated in the northern part of Iloilo. So the Ati community in Anilaw is situated in Sitio Panggurian, Barangay Mostro, Anilaw, where their community is comprised of 10 households also. And also another is the Barangay Nagpana, Barotac Viejo, Ati community, with an estimate of 167 households, which is spread near the mountainsides. So according to ATI member from also in Nagpana, some of the members who settled in Nagpana also are ATI members migrated from Antique as well and Guimaras. So of course, as said, the income or the livelihood of these two ATI communities were largely comes from their farming and as well as their selling of their handicrafts on their public market. So one example to that is depicted in the picture presented in the screen. Now let us proceed. Tara ritual. So the Tara ritual is a pre-harvest ritual with farming as the main source of livelihood and their belief and veneration to the spirits and ancestors. They observe and perform rituals with respect to their environment. So one agricultural ritual is Tara, which also pertains to foretelling harvest and performed to ask permission and seek approval from the spirits such as the taglugar of the land that they have chosen to plant their crops on. So this Atara ritual is practiced or redocumented this ritual in the Ati communities of Mostro Anilao and Pana Barotac Viejo. Uh, as said, it has varying forms or it has varying versions because both Ati communities have different versions or a different practice on how they approach the Tara ritual, of course. Okay, so let us proceed. So for the first version of the tarot ritual, according to a key informant and an active member from Mospero Anilao, the ritual is taught to them by their parents, which starts by cutting a young guava stem with leaves and planting it to their chosen area for harvest. The planted guava stem is left in the chosen area overnight, and by the morning reveals the response of the spirits, their ancestors, especially the Taglugar, to the Atis seek for permission to farm and harvest the area. So if the result says that if the guava stem remains intact without any fallen guava leaves in the morning, this entails that the spirits allow the Ati member to continue with the farming and clearing out through the kaingin. However, if the leaves from the guava stem that was planted or in the area have fallen or the stem was not intact, the spirits do not allow the Ati member to continue with their farming or our harvest. Hence, these prompted ATI members to find another area or plot of land to farm. This also reveals that the ATI member who cited or mentioned this ritual revealed that his first ritual or first witness of the ritual when was he was around 15 years old in Nagpana.
Kyla, you have 2 minutes left.
All right. Okay, so I'll just wrap it up. The second version of the ritual is in Attica and also in Anilao Ati community, which involves stacking seven tigbao leaves, where they stack these tigbao leaves overnight, and then by the morning, reveals as well that if these tigbao sticks are remained intact, the spirit allows them to farm or harvest their crops. And the same if they are not intact, they are not allowed, and they have to continue to find a land or an area to plant as well. This version of the ritual is also applicable to building a house in their communities. Another version of the ritual is also from an Ati elder in Anilao, where it is performed by cutting the guava stem and leaves and burning around the area in the chosen area that they plan to harvest. Because they explain that the smell of the burning guava leaves drives away the malevolent spirits such as the mga lok and impacto wandering around the area. And after the ritual is done, the Ati member can now start clearing out for the kainin. And the last version of the Tara ritual is the version from Nagpana Barotac Viejo, where according to an Ati informant, they perform the ritual around 12 noon or midday because they believe that the unseen beings are resting during that time. So the ritual starts by gathering sticks in a once allotted area and creating a cross and placing it to the ground, where the ati must tell to the spirits if that there are malevolent or evil beings or spirits around, they must let the ati have a bad dream. And if a bad dream happened on overnight, he or she is not allowed and must find another area to perform the ritual and continue their harvest. And hence, if the ati does not experience any bad dream, they are allowed by the spirit of that specific area they wish to plant or harvest their crops on. So for the conclusion of the presentation, the carrot ritual has various versions among the communities in Anilao and Nagpana. And according to the Nagpana Ati member, this is because that the community performed the tara is because according to what their ancestors and their parents have taught them. And hence these versions of the ritual employ indigenous methods and the use of resources to foretell and ensure a bountiful harvest, as they believe that without these practices and approval from the spirit, it will entail a bad omen for their future harvest. Their relationship with the environment and the spirits is significant for them, according to them, for it helps them sustain a comfortable life. Their belief and spirits in of the beings and of the natural world or the environment are manifested in their practices, conserving and nurturing their clearings and ancestral lands.
Hi, Kyla.
People,
Sorry, your time is up. So can we just read the remainder of the slides?
all right.
We can use the remaining time for Q&A. So if you want to add some more, then just use the remaining time to add to your points earlier. But yes, we're starting the Q&A now. We have 5 minutes. Thank you, Kyla, for that wonderful presentation about the Ati of Iloilo. Yes, please, if you have questions for Kyla, please raise your hand or unmute yourself. You can also write your questions in the chat box. I'm gonna start the ball rolling by asking Kyla about the relationship of the Ati um, and the Catholic Church, for example. Are they uh, have they been Christianized? Do they go to the Catholic Church? And if so, how do they reconcile their traditional beliefs with that of the Catholic religion? And if not, then is there do they feel themselves that their traditions are being eroded slowly over time?
Thank you for that question. As documented, we have documented numerous rituals, and one of which is the Tarot ritual. Yes, they have been influenced by religion. Some are Catholic, some are Christian, which some of our ATI members actually are pastors of the church. Of course, they also revealed to us that the influence of religion also have an effect on the continuance of the ritual, because there are some of the members of the Ati communities, uh, because of the influence of religion, they have stopped or halted the practice of these rituals, such as even the Tara, because of course there are beliefs of the other spirits, other beings, which is contrast or opposite to what the religion also would like to influence. And hence, this is one of the concerns of the communities, is how to really reconcile the religion or their practice of religion towards with their rituals or practices. Um, some of the rituals actually incorporate Catholic or prayers from the church or from the religions to their rituals, and there are some that still believes in the presence of the spirit. And the indigenous people find a common ground into that. There's the incorporation of these the belief of the God or the Lord as well, on asking for blessings on the rituals as well. But there are also some of the athletes also raised that there is the need to revive or revisit all these rituals as described since, of course, most of the rituals are not practiced anymore. It is mostly practiced by the elders and the young generation currently, as in my presentation, they have this reluctance in practicing these rituals. Hence, one of all of these two communities uh, uh, thought of ways on how to revitalize such. They have employed their own school for living traditions. They also participate in local cultural festivities. They also they also teach their children as well. However, there is still some reluctance coming from the young generation and even to those who are also influenced by the religion.
Thank you, Kyla. That was quite a comprehensive answer, actually, and I believe we don't have enough time for a second question. But please, if you have questions that you can think of for Kyla, please write them in the chat box so Kyla can answer them in her own time while listening to the rest of the paper. So thank you again, Kyla.
Thank
We
you
now
so much.
move to our second presenter. The title of the paper is Panghihibasan, Gleaning Stories from the Gleaners. And this will be presented to us by Don Iva Satumbaga of the Ateneo de Manila University.
Thanks, Kilty. I'll actually be presenting it with my colleague, Nicole. Allow me to share screen. All right, so if my screen is already visible, I can start with the presentation. Yes? Okay, so this presentation is a story of the gleaning community in Sitio Daungan, Pari, how their activities are closely tied with their environment and the challenges that they face amidst changing environmental conditions and social contexts. This presents preliminary information from the project Biodiversity and Ecological Knowledge Integration for Sustainability in Gleaning under the Sandbox Residency Program of Arete in Ateneo. For those who are unfamiliar with the practice, gleaning essentially means collecting gradually or bit by bit. In coastal gleaning, it refers to gathering invertebrates or other edible or commercially valuable organisms in coastal areas, particularly in intertidal areas, which necessitates an intimate understanding of tidal patterns. In this practice, there is no cultivation involved, and gleaning simply relies on what is naturally available. In southern Luzon, it is locally called panghihibasan, which stems from the root word hibas, meaning low tide. So even in the language, we see a dependence on natural phenomenon. It is called different things like paninhas and paninisi in other parts of the country. In the Philippines, studies show that gleaning plays an important role in nutrition, resilience, and the income of gleaning households. However, while total gleaning catch has increased over time, the catch per effort has also declined, meaning that people are getting less now than in the past for the same amount of effort. Despite this being a traditional practice, even with archaeological evidence, there are minimal studies on coastal gleaning. These studies mostly focus on gleaning economics and biodiversity surveys, not on the culture of gleaning. Even in popular media, the gleaned shellfish are focused, but not the gleaners behind them. In southern Luzon, where our partner community is located, there are no gleaning studies, despite it being a primary livelihood for some communities. Our partner community is located in Sitio Daungan Pari, Barangay Binahaan, Pagbilao, Quezon. They are a small community largely consisting of migrants from the Visayas or tracing their roots there. They have been gleaning since time immemorial, and the oldest person we interviewed said they were gleaning in the area since the 80s, and this is a practice that they have carried over from their coastal community in the Visayas. They used to glean in their immediate surroundings, but these areas have been overexploited, according to them, and now they glean far away, sometimes even crossing to a different municipality and needing to take a boat to get there. Based on our preliminary surveys, we found a total of 17 mollusk species present, 16 of which are gleaned, and the community has a name for all these different gleaned shellfish. But when asked for their preference, they consider shells that are most sellable and marketable, speaking of the importance of gleaning in their livelihood landscape. Oops, sorry. I think I pressed the wrong button. Am I still sharing screen? No?
No, ma'am.
host disabled participant screen sharing. So I can there you go. It was disabled a while ago. So I'll just share my screen again. Is it visible now?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. So I'll just continue with the presentation. So because of this dependence on, hang on, let me see if I'm on the right slide. Yes. Okay. So based on our preliminary surveys, yes, we've been here. Because of this dependence on gleaning, community members learn to glean at a young age, first starting as a type of play. Buday, the woman here, she's 27 years old and she's been gleaning since she was a child. She gathered more shellfish in the same amount of time compared to 5 people from our team combined. Hang on. My Okay. So aside from selling and consumption, the community also uses the shells for other purposes, such as flooring in their immediate surroundings. So since it's a small community, members know each other and gleaning is often practiced with kin and sometimes with cohort. Our guide, Tintin Talia, knew everyone in the community, even if she has only been there since 2019 after marrying a local from the community. So now I will now turn over the space to my colleague Nicole, who will talk about local ecological knowledge and the changing context of the community.
Okay, thank you very much, Dawn, and good afternoon to everyone. So if you could go on, please, to the next slide. Okay, so our team believes that the experiences of the Daungang Pari community demonstrate the conference theme of communing and reconciling with nature. And we summarize why and how in the next 3 slides. So first, local ecological knowledge is born from communing with nature over time. It demonstrates how individuals within the community and the community as a whole understand their place within the natural world, and even if not overtly expressed as such, their roles and responsibilities within this context. Next slide, please. Second, local ecological knowledge as practiced constitutes communing and continuous reconciliation and renegotiation with the natural world. We see this especially in communities such as Daungang Pari, where local ecological knowledge informs pragmatic concerns such as livelihood or daily sustenance. It also bears pointing out how local ecological knowledge is transmitted, as we see in the photo here of different shells drawn by community children during our field work. So they did this by assisting each other and without any intervention from the community adults. So we see that even at a young age, members of the community possess this knowledge and are able to put it in practice. The next slide, please. So third, it is recognized that Indigenous knowledge and local ecological knowledge are extremely important in actions to stem the triple planetary crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. We see this even in expert reports, such as those of the IPCC and the IPBES. And local ecological knowledge is important here because a plurality of perspectives is needed if these crises are to be addressed in an inclusive, participatory, and equitable way. This entails meaningful and long-term engagement with local communities on the ground to understand their local ecological knowledge, and this may also lead to growing their own appreciation of this knowledge because they will see how it is relevant or even valuable to other people beyond the community. Okay, so for the next couple of slides, we will discuss a few of the changes that are seen in the social and natural environment, which are often happening at a very fast rate. And these are what make reconciling with nature all the more necessary. So the next slides will cover some of these changes and challenges in the community's own words. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we see that the Ungang Pari community notes numerous environmental changes that affect not only their gleaning practice, but also life in the community in general. This photo shows one of those changes. So seawater now reaches further inland during the high tide, causing floods where there were none before. The quote here reads, "Water doesn't reach this place before, but it is now flooded during the high tide." We know that this might only worsen with intensifying climate change and might also be affected by land and sea use change in other parts of the municipality. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Residents have also noticed a marked decline in what can be gleaned, and we see it from this excerpt. Okay, noted on the time. Thank you. So if previously gleaning could support an orphan, so gleaning in the 80s and 90s could support an orphan, this is no longer the case, and that is not only because of the decline in collection, but also lower market prices. I will move to the next slide in the interest of time. Okay, so gleaning is, next slide please, si gloves. Ayan. So gleaning is a very resource and labor-intensive activity, and it does require investment in terms of equipment in addition to time and effort. The nature of the activity entails considerable wear and tear to the equipment because shells can be quite sharp when you're gathering them underwater. So residents have had to improvise protective gear sometimes, as we saw from Buday's photo, or just keep acquiring what they need, resulting in lesser income that they take home. And then, lastly, so the practice of gleaning has had to negotiate with the formalization of resource governance. So for example, as Don mentioned, local ordinances in Pagbilao and the neighboring town of Burgos limit gleaning to areas within the municipal borders. And then there are bantay dagat or coastal guards that occasionally patrol the borders to enforce these ordinances. When the bantay dagat is on patrol, as in this picture, the gleaners are not able to access the gleaning grounds, which are right on the border. And that means there is no livelihood to speak of because they cannot go where they need to go. However, we know that borders, especially in coastal areas, are a lot more porous. So communities such as the AUN-EEC constantly have to renegotiate the spaces between municipalities in order to practice their livelihood and the local ecological knowledge associated with it. I think I will just go straight to the summary and insights to wrap up. So to summarize, community stories of their gleaning practice demonstrate a deep awareness of tides, weather patterns, and biodiversity, and how these have changed over time. Gleaning has also given rise to aspects of material culture, which are all rooted in pragmatic concerns. So for example, how to continue their livelihood or how to best make use of the shells that are collected. And there are many environmental, social, and political changes that necessitate renegotiation or reconciliation of the practice of coastal gleaning. It remains to be seen how the community will continue to adapt to these new conditions and structures. We have one more slide, but I'm not sure, we might be out of time, so we can use the Q&A portion instead. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dawn and Nicole, for that presentation, which I'm a bit familiar with because I work actually with Dawn and Nicole with Sandbox now. But hopefully others in the room also have questions or comments on the study of Dawn and Nicole. Feel free to unmute yourself or write in the chat box. But maybe I'd start again with this question about the options available for people in the Ungan-Pari. Is gleaning the very bottom of the options available to the locals in terms of economic activity, or is this something that they feel is worth their time and effort, considering the many challenges that they face?
Thank you, Skilty, for the question. So if I can answer that question. Actually, for the community institution, the Ungan Pari, they're quite unique because in other literature, gleaning is considered as something more recreational, something that's considered as an alternative source of food or livelihood. But for the community in Daungan Pari, gleaning for them is primary. So gleaning is their primary source of livelihood. And whenever they get shells, their first option is to sell those shells so that they could get rice and other kinds of viand. They only eat them if they're unable to sell them, or if if no one sells them, or they have no other source of food. So it's their go-to resource for sustenance, which is different in other settings.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Hi as well to Cherry, who member of the team, who's also joining us today. Yes, are there questions from the
I have
room?
I have a question.
Go ahead, please, Dennis.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for this work. I like it. I'm so inspired with the way you are engaging the community. I've observed that most of the, can we say, gleaners are women. So do you see any kind of a manifestation of self-determination here in terms of expressing their gender, and kind of, I'm trying to find out the labor and gender here, and any observation about the expression of their agency as women in gleaning.
Thanks, Dennis, for the question. Maybe I'll start and maybe Nicole can add something more later on. First, based on the literature, since this is not the only place where gleaning occurs, there's actually literature that's focused on the role of women. And it's interesting how gleaning provides a kind of highlight or spotlight for women, since in most communities women are the foremost gleaners, since the men tend to go fishing when they can. It's just different in this community because they don't have a lot of resources. So even for the men, their primary source is gleaning. But for other communities, it allows women to sort of have a role in terms of providing for the family, and in terms of creating or having this space where they can assert their role in nutrition and in the sustenance of their community. So it's quite interesting to look at the gender aspect as well of this practice. Maybe Miss Nicole would have something to add to.
Just a little
Or
bit, and thank you very much, Sir Dennis, for raising the question. Well, I think that at least in the Ungang Pari and in terms of gender, something else that gleaning might be able to provide is to strengthen the relationships of women with each other. Because gleaning is a communal activity. So normally the women all go gleaning together, and they also use that time to, tell stories, interact, share about their lives. So that might be an interesting aspect of gender and gleaning in the community, which we hope to explore further. Thank you po.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you. We have room for one more quick question and one quick answer, hopefully. Any comments on the paper, on the research? Was it challenging for you to do this research? Oh, okay. I'm just gonna read this because there's a question from Olivia. Do you know why the market value of shells decreased?
we didn't include this in the presentation, but we also looked at other places where gleaning happens, and it's different based on the locality that you are in. For example, as part of the larger sandbox project, we also went to San Juan, Batangas. There they were gleaning shells, the Luna shells, that sold for about 100 a kilo. But here in Sitio Daungan Pari, they sell the kind of shells that sell for about when it comes from them directly, it sells for only 10 pesos a kilo or 20 pesos a kilo. It's 40 or 50 in the market. So I'm not sure if this has decreased over time, but definitely there's a factor of the diversity of the environment where they are from. So what resources are available in the environment are also the resources from which they can get the shells. So if you have resources that are highly valued, then also you have a larger market value for the shells.
All right. Thank
Yep.
you
Oh,
very
Sir
much.
Stilty.
Yes,
Sige po.
please, Nicole,
Ay,
go ahead.
sorry. I'd add lang quickly because I didn't get to it in the presentation. I think it also has to do with how other people appreciate shells that are gleaned. Because as we mentioned, gleaning is very resource and labor intensive. But when shells are peddled or sold to other members of the community, there seems to be a kind of perception that since you're just picking them up off the coastline, they shouldn't sell for so much. So a lot of the gleaners always have told us stories about they're selling the shells at a very low price, but it's not uncommon for other people to even haggle to get the price down more. So yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Panghihibasan team, for this presentation. Again, if the participants of this conference have additional questions, feel free to use the chat box. All the presenters will stay towards the end of the until the end of the session for our photo session. So feel free to communicate with them. We'll now move to our third presenter. The paper is Ancient Forest, New Connection, Indigenous Knowledge and Alteration under the Impact of Discourse in Forest Conservation Policy, case of Ma people, Ta Lai Commune, Tan Phu District, Dong Nai Province, Vietnam. And this will be presented by Lebik Ngok Kong and Lengok Tran Vo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is my voice clear?
Yes, clear, loud and clear.
Okay. So I will share my screen. Is our presentation available, visible on the screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we'll start. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khương Lê Bích Ngọc and my partner Võ Lê Ngọc Trân. So today we will present about our research, Asian Forest, New Connection, Indigenous Knowledge and Alteration under the Impact of Discourse in Forest Conservation Policy, the case of Ma people in Ta Lai Commune, Tân Phú District, Dong Nai Province, Vietnam. So here's some of information about us. And before we starting the presentation, we'd like to review some of the contents that we will cover. First one is our research background and objective, our methods, key finding, conclusion, and the last one is recommendation and utilization of the research results. So begin with the research background. First, we will like to quote a statement once shared by IPPES is recognition of knowledge, innovation, and practice, institution and value of indigenous people and local community and their inclusion and participation in the environmental governance often enhance their quality of life as well as nature conservation, restoration, and sustainable use. So as you can see in today's context, to consider the indigenous knowledge constructing process is no longer simply to see indigenous knowledge as the result of the interactive relationship between indigenous people with nature. Oh, sorry, maybe there's something with our screen. Say. Okay, I will share it again. And yes. Not only the interactive relationship between the indigenous people with nature, but also needs to be put in a process of recognized, innovated, and practiced in response to political, cultural, and social context. So with this idea, we focus on the process of identifying, reviewing, renewing, and practicing indigenous knowledge of Ma people in the context of responding to the impact of the hegemonic discourse system in the government forest protection policies. And the research on indigenous knowledge has been born in this research, in the field of research since 1954, and until the applied research phase around 90s, research on indigenous knowledge mostly focused on enumerating and the value of indigenous knowledge in the conservation and development of natural resources, but it is separated from political, cultural, and social context. As a result, it is difficult to assess how context has influenced indigenous knowledge. And in recent years, international research has seen significant changes when studying indigenous knowledge along with the economic, political, and social context. However, in Vietnam, it is still limited by enumeration and has not taken into account the process of knowledge transformation and construction associated with the political, economic, and social context today. So we continuing about the theory, we continuing with the idea of Michel Foucault in interpreting the relationship between power and knowledge in the process of constructing discourse. In other words, those who hold power in a given field can create knowledge and vice versa. Knowledge holder will have the power to influence people. About method, we using qualitative research method with 5 intermittent field trip from October 2022 to April 2023 in the buffer zone of Getty National Park. And we also use participant observation to record the daily life of the community and the interaction between the community with the forest. And also conduct 15 in-depth interviews with the following 6 target group: people who entering forest to collect forest products, crop doctor, manager of Getty National Park, ranger, portal work for tourism organization, and local freelance tour guide. About our field side, the Getty National Park. In the 1978, the forest was decided by the government to become a forbidden forest located in Tân Phú district, Đồng Nai province. And the Ma community has relocated from the forest core area and built the Talai village. And in 2001, Getty National Park was recognized by UNESCO as a World Biosphere Reserve. And this leads to the fact that the forbidden forest policy and forest protection had create a great impact on the Ma community whose life is inherently associated with the forest. And their main livelihood is shifting, cultivation, and hunting and gathering forest products. So in short, the community has been experiencing a great change in living space, livelihood, and traditional knowledge practice associated with the implementation of local forest protection policy. So therefore, the Ma community and their process of creating and transforming knowledge is one of the issues that needs to be studied in more details, especially in the context of community knowledge and conservation issue. Resources are getting more and more attention. So that's also the reason for the research to choose the community in this area at the research object.
And so we will continue with the key finding. And the knowledge constructing process of my community has gone through 3 distinct phases. And the first is connect. And the forest supplies a space of accommodations, livelihoods, beliefs, and spiritual practice that guarantee the survival of the community. And the indigenous knowledge includes the knowledge of plants, animals, seasons, scarce forests, and that were used for many aspects of life, such as collecting foods, medicinal plants, and hunting. And according to the survey, there are 56 plant species that appear in daily life, including foods, medicinal plant materials. And besides that, the Ma people have the concept every plant in the forest is a medicinal plant. So wildlands are the main source of food for the community. And as many indigenous community and the Ma people have their belief about the spiritual forest as well. And Nablu was the god of the forest. And they spread their story about the god and create a system of ritual when dealing with the forest. And so God can be considered as a way that Ma people protected their spiritual forest from generation to generation. And now, in other words, indigenous knowledge of Ma people maintains a parallel relationship between the human and nature with the rule exploitation between to rotation. And the second phase is disconnecting. And in 1978, the forests were decided by the government to become the forbidden forest, and many stricter policies were banned. And a system of discourse was established as well. And according to the policy, gathering, hunting, and cultivation rely on forests were considered as the main factors that led to the deforestation. And therefore, the owner of the indigenous system become the main agent who destroyed the forest. And so the local policy established the fixed cultivation and sedentarization in the buffer zone of Getty National Park. and they supported the community to leave their old settlement to a new one. And in addition, the community was supported to strengthen their livelihoods from gathering, hunting, and cultivation relying forests to the wet rice cultivation industrial crops. And the concept gathering, hunting, and cultivation led to the deforestation were built through the documents, banner, forbidden signs, and very education activities and air research. A system of discourse in the state forest conservation policy record on of the aspect of indigenous community. And for example, the limitation of gathering activities and the use interest in tests of medicinal plants and the research of the policy. And the reason of God with the spiritual forest belief is overshadowing. And because now the forest is protected by a lot of policy from the local government and a system of ranchers instead of non-local God. And in general, the connection between the Mabibo with their forest was interrupted. And the third is reconnect. Under the impact of the disgust, the Mabibo didn't consider themselves as an agent of deforestation, and the belief that ancestral custom belong to ancestral forest is impossible to eradicate. And the community is still in the process of creating new ways to practicing indigenous knowledge. And the first way is compromise with those who hold the power, such as the park rangers. And that means they can gather some plants for food and medicinal plants with a limited quantity. And the second is they can become the portal for protecting national park tourism. And nowadays, traditional knowledge continue to be created, practiced, and plays an important role in the field of health, especially in COVID-19. And another field is tourism. And the knowledge about the forest as well as the spiritual places in traditional forests are becoming one of the factors attracting the tourists. And concerning health and tourism also create a reconnecting space between the community and the ancestral forest.
Hi, can you wrap up? Time is up. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, sir.
Yeah, you have time to wrap up. You have 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. It's conclusion. And in the context of great economic, political, and social change, the state of discourse in forest conservation policies had a strong impact on indigenous knowledge practice. But the ethnic knowledge is in a passive or disadvantageous position, And however, this process is not recognizing community development policies, and the limited of contact between the community and the forest is created many challenges in the forest process of knowledge creation and practice. And thanks everyone for the listening. We will be glad to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our two friends from Vietnam. Yes, please, anyone is free to unmute themselves and ask a question for researchers. I would like to ask the first question about what you think would be the most effective way of making the government, at least the local government, involve the community and use the knowledge in policy making, because I think you said in your last few slides that that's the thing that's lacking. There is a lot of knowledge from the locals, from the community, but it's not being recognized in official policy. So what do you think would be the most effective way for this to happen?
Okay, so your question is what we think is the most effective way for to to involve the communities in local
Yes.
policies is I think that the most effective way that we need to make some conversation between the local between the communities and some people who have the powers to
Right.
create knowledge in that in the local at a local yes. Sorry, let me make this clear, Glenn. Sorry, because English is not our first language.
It's fine.
So,
No. I
so
think
I think
you were on your way
we
to
need to
answer.
think about some vocab. Like we need to put the communication and some and like for example some rangers or the manager of Katy National Park into a conversation because the things that we have seen when we came to Talai village is that there are a miscommunication between the rangers, the manager with the communication. They have some conflict with each other. So the most effective way that we think that the community should to resolve this problem is that we need to make some conversations between
Right.
between them. So thank you for your listening.
Yeah. Thank
and
you. And I agree that more conversations need to happen. But do you think that's easy to do? Is that hard to do in that part of Vietnam, or it can be? Do you think it can be easily done?
Actually, I don't think it can be easily done because they are also make some conversation between the communities and some rangers and manager in Talai village. But the problem is some rangers and there's some people in the ranger group or the manager group they refuse to listening to the community. So yeah, it's not easy way to make some conversation. But as our perspective, we think that is the most effective way to trying to connect to the the communities with the rangers or the manager of the local.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you so
we
much.
have the same situation in Philippines, where, as you've seen from the previous presenters, there seems to be a disconnect between indigenous knowledge um, and policies that are supposed to help them. Um, so, in terms of um, communicating whatever needs um, the people have, there there needs to be improvement in both the Philippines and Vietnam, and I'm sure in many parts of the world. That's the challenge. So thank you very much again for your presentation. Um,
Thank you so
Again,
much
if
for your questions and
thank you. Yeah,
yes.
please, other presenters, if you have more questions, you can use the chat box. We now move to our fourth presenter. Um, the paper is titled Residents' Knowledge, Attitudes, and Perceptions of Long-Tailed Macaques, Macaca fascicularis Raffles, 1821, in Barangay Sumile, Butuan City, with notes on population estimation. This will be presented by Lady Fe M. Lamora.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So I'm now sharing my screen. Wait. Do you already see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
Is my voice clear?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Lady Felamora, and I will be presenting our research on the residents' knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions of long-tailed macaques in Barangay Sumili, Butuan City, with notes on population estimation. So long-tailed macaques or Macaca fascicularis are arboreal, diurnal, and omnivorous primates that belong to the family Cercopithecidae, or the family of Old World monkeys. They are ubiquitous creatures widely distributed throughout Southeast Asia due to their high adaptation to various habitats and climate conditions. Interestingly, long-tailed macaques are the only primate species that occur naturally in the Philippines, predominantly in Palawan, Mindoro, Samar, Leyte, Negros, Panay, as well as in Mindanao, including Butuan City. These monkeys are frequently sighted in forest edges, thus they are called edge species. Sadly, long-tailed macaques are now listed as endangered by the IUCN Red List, urging immediate actions to conserve their dwindling population. So one of the major factors that contributed to the endangered status of long-tailed macaques is human encroachment into forested habitats. This has increased the interactions between humans and macaques in residential areas, such as in farms, tourist lodges, reserves, roadside temples, and towns, where they exhibit nuisance behaviors, including littering, property damage, entering human areas, disturbing people, and stealing. So residents in Barangay Sumili face conflicts with long-tailed macaques due to frequent encounters and disturbance. However, addressing these issues remains a challenge due to limited literature on long-tailed macaque research in the Philippines. Primate accurate knowledge of animal abundance and density and baseline information on community perspectives of a species are critical to primate conservation. Hence, this study was the first to assess residence gap and estimate the population of long-tailed macaques in the area. So this study aimed to determine the socio-demographic profile of the residents, assess their cap levels, determine the relationship between their socio-demographic variables and cap, and estimate the population of long-tailed macaques. So this study was conducted at Barangay Sumili, Butuan City, Philippines. So within the barangay is a park called the Crayfish Sumili Botanical and Zoological Garden, which is a forest fragment surrounded by road and human settlements. It is where the long-tailed macaque populations are present, and it also serves as the main avenue for ecotourism in the barangay, since tourists frequently visit the garden to see and provide food for long-tailed macaques. So a survey was conducted to get the cap of the residents. Before the survey, permission from the barangay and prior consent from the respondents were acquired. So the survey questionnaire was validated by a sociologist and a linguist, and prior to the actual survey, a pilot survey was conducted on 30 respondents for reliability. So for the population estimation, line transect sampling was used with a total of 6 transect lines established within the forest fragment. So the estimation was conducted from 7:30 to 10:30 a.m. and from 3 to 5:30 p.m. when monkeys are usually active. No field sampling was conducted during the survey because long-tailed macaques were hard to detect, which could result in poor estimation. So during the sampling, these are the following data recorded: time of detection and until to age and post disabled participant screen sharing. Wait. Okay, so that's it for the method for the population estimation. So the collected survey data were analyzed by descriptive statistics. So levels of cap were determined by getting the average mean of each indicator, and the resulting means were then interpreted using interpretation tables. So Kramer's V and Spearman-Rowe correlation coefficient were utilized to determine the strength of the relationship between socio-demographic variables and cap. For the population estimation, Culker method was used to get the population density. This method was employed since it is more suited to high survey effort over a short period. These are the equations used to get the data for population estimation. We also included the two measures of population structure, the adult male to female ratio and the immature to adult female ratio. So this study found that most of the respondents were females belonging to the age group of 18 to 25 years old, high school graduates, farmers, and have been residing in their barangay for 17 to 24 years. So the greater proportion of female respondents than their male counterparts is due to women being more likely to stay at home than men. Thus, they are more ready to participate in surveys. Younger residents with higher educational levels compared to older residents in Sumili were also more willing to partake in the survey. Farming is found to be the main livelihood source for residents in Sumili, given the majority of farmers in the area. Also, the residents have resided in their barangay since birth or at least moved to the area at a very young age. These results answer the first objective of this study regarding the socio-demographic profile of the residents. For the CAP levels, knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions gained an overall mean of 4.27, 4.29, and 4.42 respectively, which indicate high levels of CAP. So residents exhibited the highest knowledge in immediately recognizing long-tailed macaques from afar because they were already familiar with how these monkeys looked and sounded due to frequent encounters with them. They also highly favor long-tailed macaques due to their intelligence. This finding is similar to the study of Sabatini and others in 2006 at Brazil, wherein people like capuchin monkeys because they consider them intelligent and attractive. Also, residents in Sumili highly perceive the local government at the barangay or city level as the most effective body in making environmental and wildlife-related decisions, indicating that residents' trust in the government to execute its responsibility in managing the long-tailed macaque populations in the area. These results answer the second objective of this study regarding the CAP levels of the residents. Sex, educational attainment, and occupation are weakly to moderately associated with the level of knowledge of long-tailed macaques. This means that females are slightly more knowledgeable about long-tailed macaques than males, and that despite their lower educational attainment as high school graduates, they still exhibit high knowledge about long-tailed macaques. Moreover, since farmers frequently encounter long-tailed macaques within the forest fragment, of course, they have extensive macaque knowledge. On the other hand, the positive attitude of residents towards long-tailed macaques is weakly associated with sex and moderately associated with occupation. This means that females favor long-tailed macaques more because they are more outspoken when it comes to environmental concerns, and that the farmers have already adapted to living with wildlife that cause damage to their crops, hence their positive feelings towards these monkeys. However, only the occupation of the residents has a moderate association with their level of perception. This means that farmers hold high perceptions about long-tailed macaques because they may perceive these primates to be essential for the environment. These results answer the third objective of this study regarding the relationship between socio-demographic variables and CAP. On the other hand, the estimated population of long-tailed macaques within Sumili was 120 individuals with a population density of 1.88 individuals per meter squared. A total of 5 troops of long-tailed macaques and 2 solitary units were detected within the fragment. Their group size ranges between 10 to 35 individuals with an average group size of 20 individuals per group. So this average group size is actually similar to the wild and non-provisioned populations of long-tailed macaques in Singapore and Indonesia, meaning that the long-tailed macaque troops in Sumili can still forage for natural food sources despite human provisioning from tourists and residents. Including the age and sex class of long-tailed macaques has allowed us to determine the adult male to adult female ratio at 1:1. So this ratio implies that there is a comparable number of adult males and adult females within their population. Meanwhile, the calculated immature to adult female ratio was 1.86. And according to Zucker and Clark in 2003, Higher ratios above 1.5 indicate a sustainable population, while lower ratios indicate a population decline. In other words, there is a sustainable population of long-tailed macaques in Barangay Sumili.
Lady Faye,
Generally,
you have 30 seconds left.
okay, so I'm going to skip to conclusion and recommendation. So this study is the first to comprehensively assess residence cap in Barangay Sumili. So the high cap levels of residents can be used for conservation and management initiatives given their highly a willingness to participate. So we recommend to implement education programs, habitat protection and forest rehabilitation programs, and further exploration of the habitat range for more precise data and for monitoring purposes in order to achieve effective conservation and prevention of severe human-macaque conflicts in the future. Thank you all for listening and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Lady Faye Lamora of Caraga State University, for that really interesting presentation. Yes, we have a first question from Nicole. Let me just read this out loud. Curious as regards any measures that the local government has implemented to limit damage from long-tailed macaques on crops and properties, especially given the conservation status.
Okay, so as per anecdotal evidence from the residents as well as the Barangay Council of Sumili, yes, they have measures. In fact, they have implemented an ordinance wherein they prohibited people or the residents in Sumili to harm long-tailed macaques. And also, the Barangay Council of Sumili also enforced a sort of a they sorry. Okay, so again, by the Barangay Council of Sumili implemented an ordinance to prohibit people in harming long-tailed macaques. And although according to residents also, some farmers were irritated by the damage caused by long-tailed macaques. However, although they experienced these disturbances, these damages caused by monkeys, but because of the ordinance that the Barangay Council implemented, they have no choice but to abide by the law, and so their only choice is to ignore the long-tailed macaques that damage to their crops, and they just think that they should plant more crops for them to lessen their crop to lessen their crop damage. That's all.
Thank you. We have another question from Roselle.
Thank you very much. That is really a very good presentation. We really learned a lot, and it's very positive because your review of literature has more from negative things about this. No, so thank you very much. And I'd like to ask, though you said that regardless of demographic profile, generally the people in the barangay are very respectful and tolerant. No?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's a very very important finding of your study. No, have you presented this to the LGU? Have you shared your findings?
Not yet, ma'am, as this study just recently finished, ma'am. In fact, last month. So I'm still planning to go back to the community, to the Barangay Sumili, since that barangay is a remote area of Butuan City. And Going there is very difficult given the difficult road conditions. So I'm still planning for to go back to that
Con-
community to
Congratulations.
present my answer.
Congratulations. And I think people in this conference should support you in your advocacy with scientific findings. No, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, other questions? What's the local term for macaque in Butuan?
Um, they just use the word unggoy, sir.
Unggoy lang, yeah.
Yes, no particular word for that. Just
But are
unggoy.
there other kinds of unggoy in Butuan?
No, sir.
It's the only one.
It's the only one, sir. As what I've said earlier, long-tailed macaques are the only natural populations of monkeys here in the Philippines.
I see. All right.
Wow.
That's a new information for me. As an anthropologist who study people. um, um, all right. Other questions from the participants in this room? If none, we can take a 5-minute break, restroom break, a water break, and then we'll resume 3:25. We'll be back here in the room. So thank you again very much, Lady Fe Lamora, for your presentation.
You're
We'll take a
welcome, sir.
5-minute break. Welcome back. We will now move to our fifth paper titled Preserving the Palawanos Cultural Heritage, Indigenous Wisdom in Almasiga Resin Production at Amas, Brooks Point, Palawan. This will be presented by Lawrence Adolf Amada and John Louis Educado of UP Los Baños.
Okay, sir, may I ask permission to share my screen? Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Adolf Mamada, a research associate from the College of Forestry and Natural Resources, UP Los Baños, and I am here to present, along with my colleague John Louis Educado, the indigenous wisdom of the Palauan people in Almasiga resin production. So the primary objective of this presentation is describe the indigenous knowledge of the Palauan people in Almasiga resin tapping and how knowledge integration can aid them in facing the challenges that endanger their indigenous practices. Our country is known for being a mega diverse country due to its abundance in wildlife, but we must not set aside the fact that it is a culturally diverse nation having 110 IP groups with a population of 17 million people. According to the IWGIA, there are three major IP groups in the Philippines: the Igorots of the North, Mangyans of the Central Islands, and the Lumads of the South. And they are renowned as stewards of nature, possessing valuable knowledge as a result of the relationship between their environment and their culture. So this presentation is about the Palauan people, an IP group from the south of Palawan, and they survive mainly through hunting and foraging. And they are also known for harvesting bagtik or almasiga resin, which is commercially known as Manila Kupal, a valuable ingredient for varnish, paints, and incense. The Palauans are known for their indigenous way of gathering almasiga resin, which deviates from the standards set by regulatory agencies. This posed as a challenge for the Palauan people because they are required to utilize the recommended cut in order for their permit to be renewed. Also, lowland intermediaries exploit the majority of the IPs when it comes to resin trade. The aforementioned problems endanger the continuity of the Palauans' indigenous way of extracting resin from the trees. So this is the map showing the top trees in Amas, Brooks Point, Palawan, presented by the green dots. And this is how the top trees in Amas look up close with resin oozing from the multiple cuts that they have made. And to discuss the Palauan way of almasiga resin tapping, here's my colleague JL.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Lawrence. I'm here to share the Palawan Almasiga resin tapping practices. Tapping is a process of extracting resin from Almasiga tree. Tappers in other areas have their own tapping technique or cut. The Palawans practice a unique way of tapping that sets them apart from other tapping methods in different regions. But before that, but before we discuss the traditional cut made by Palawan, let me show you first the FPRDI tapping cut. The FPRDI's method involves a 30 centimeter initial horizontal cut and a 1 to 2 centimeter vertical cut with an application of 25% solution of ethyl, while the other pictures show the traditional cut made by Palawan tappers in Brooks Point, Palawan. Here are the other cut made by different sites. Cut made by tappers in Davao Oriental is almost similar to FPRDI standards but modified to 4-inch wide cuts. The San Vicente tappers cut is similar to a tree girdle, while the Palawan maintained their traditional cut, which is a triangular diamond shape. The Palawan tapping practices have three stages: the pre-tapping, the actual tapping, and the collection of resin. First is the pre-tapping. Under the pre-tapping is the tree selection. The Palawan classify almasiga trees based on resin color and diameter at breast height or TBH. Based on resin color, puti for those trees with white resin and bunga-bunga or kemanga for those with red resin. And under the tree selection is the diameter at breast height as another consideration, measured using local units like dangkal or dipa. Trees are ready for tapping when too large to hug, aligning with the scientific guidelines of FPRDI-DOST, recommends the DBH of 40 centimeter. And under the pre-tapping is the cleaning. Trees and surroundings are cleaned before tapping, underscoring the significance of maintaining a clean environment for resin quality. They believe that leaving the resin on the ground will keep termites from harming the trees. Resin terpenoids, as cited by Darakan et al., might possess a chemical defense and repellent qualities due to their combined toxicity. And now is the actual tapping. Here are the illustration of how the Palauan tap their almasiga trees. Okay, first is the initial incision. Initial incision in the process known as sahuyong or their local term. These incisions on the bark of almasiga trees are carefully crafted in a diamond or triangular shape with an approximate size of 4 to 6 centimeter and using their bolos and machetes. And this technique showcases creativity by forming lower tips that function as drainage outlets, promoting an efficient flow of resin. And after making the initial sahuyong, toppers closely monitor the resin flow, which serve as an indicator of the tree's resin potential. If the resin flow is good, a subsequent step involves precising timing for rechipping. This step, known as ratap, entails recutting the initial incision at specific intervals of 15 and 30 days. It is an additional inch of depth added to the top of the original cut. This approach rejuvenates the resin flow. Here are the actual top cut or made by the Palawan people during our field work. And in some instances, toppers option for square-shaped cuts, also called ratap. However, it's essential to note that these won't yield a thinner flow of resin compared to the traditional sahuyong cuts. To minimize tree stress, new incision made with at least 3 months between successive cuts, and the number of cuts made on a tree bark depend on its diameter. A maximum of 4 cuts on a 40 centimeter DBH or when too large to hug. And lastly is the collection of resin. The Palawan collect resin once or twice a month during their rechipping. They use kiba, a container made of woven rattan stems and pulp or kakang leaves. So the Palawan Almasiga topping reflects deep tree knowledge, culture, and ecology. Beyond extraction, it symbolizes their connection with nature and their traditional significance. For the next slides are the traditional belief of the Palawans in Almasiga resin tapping. Traditionally, women have been withheld from the act of tapping the almasiga trees. Men who shoulder the responsibility of tapping the trees or harvesting the resin. They believe that if women touch the almasiga tree, it affects the resin flow. Likely, also, urinating and spitting near the almasiga tree are strictly prohibited. Marking the almasiga tree with paint is not allowed. They do the smudging when resin yields are low. They believe that burning forest material will purify the environment and seek blessing. They believe that smoke will rejuvenate the resin flow. And here are the example of what we do during our fieldwork to respect their beliefs. We mark it using a small tarp and stick beside the tree. And the next slides are the challenges of Palawan community that we'll discuss by Lawrence Amada.
So thank you, JL. So here are the challenges that the Palauans face with regards to almasiga resin tapping. As I have mentioned earlier, the Palauans need to comply with the tapping regulations for their tapping to be renewed. Moreover, the costly inventory requirements and the prescribed resin tapping method, which is not consistent with the tapping methods that the Palauans use. These can endanger their indigenous resin tapping knowledge and practices. A solution in addressing the difficulties that I have highlighted previously is the integration of indigenous knowledge with other knowledge systems. We must realize that the natural resource management is a result of complex socio-ecological ecosystems or a byproduct of many knowledge systems. Policies and plans would be much easier to implement if the diversity of knowledge systems and power asymmetries were put into consideration. In the US, IK or indigenous knowledge is recognized for its contributions to the country's development and is thus integrated into federal decision-making. As cited in the article by Daniel et al., when people are part of the solution, they invest in it. So for the ways forward, conducting a comprehensive research on the sustainability of the indigenous method of tapping almasiga must be done. Creation of guidelines or frameworks for incorporating indigenous knowledge into the ADS-DPP cross-agency collaborations to promote indigenous knowledge integration, and using it to shape plans and policies involving IPs are just some of the things which must be done as well. For the conclusion, the Palauan people's unique method of tapping almasiga trees is a testament to the profound interplay between culture, nature, and spirituality, which had endured the test of time and is passed down across generations. We must realize that it is a sacred art, emphasizing the respect for nature and the division of labor among Palauan men and women. Integrating it with other knowledge systems, as well as empowering IPs through their involvement in policymaking and planning, will ensure the preservation of their indigenous knowledge and practices. So here are the references, and we'd like to thank the following for their valuable contribution to this study: NTFPEP, Ms. Norly Kulili, SPABP, the OST Picard, and the UPLB Almasiga Policy Advocacy Project, led by our project leader, Dr. Margaret M. Calderon. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Lawrence and John Louis, for the presentation and for keeping within the time allotted to you. Yes, please, questions from the participants? Really interesting study as well.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Dennis.
Salamat. Thanks, Lawrence and John Louis. I'm curious about negotiating with indigenous knowledge and scientific investigation. How do you reconcile those two? Do we call indigenous knowledge when it's actually scientifically important? Do you understand what I'm saying? So maybe there's a divide here, or a kind of a dichotomy. When does indigenous knowledge becomes scientific?
Yes, I understand. That's why we are recommending the comprehensive study regarding the study on sustainability of the tapping process. And I think there is a study involving the Kasinawa people of Brazil, and they have incorporated indigenous knowledge in the production of policies and plans in the CISA policy. I think the results of a comprehensive study would help in integrating the knowledge of indigenous people with the current scientific knowledge with regards to Almasiga resin tap.
Thank you. Another question from Roselle.
Thank you very much for your study. It's really very interesting and very enlightening. I'd like to ask, when you did your study, did you work closely with organized groups in the area? Because obviously that policy you said that against the indigenous knowledge, which is a government policy, right? And it has been passed. So if you were working closely with organized, because there's a group of elders usually among the IP groups, no? And I know the NCIP works with the IP group. So parang the policy which works against the indigenous knowledge is really very full of conflict. No, yeah.
Actually, we've talked with the SPABP, Samahan ng mga Palauano sa Amas Brooks Point, and they are our partners in this study, the policy advocacy. And we are advocating for a policy which is lenient to the practices of the indigenous peoples. Actually, we have 3 major sites, one in North Palawan, one in South Palawan, and one in Governor Generoso, all of which are having indigenous people, since most of the Almasiga areas are within IP territory. That's why we have made dialogue with NCIP, the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development, and consultations are still continuing up until now. Even though our project is almost ending, we have been given 2 years to conduct our studies, and I think that is not enough.
So 30 seconds. So you're saying that it's like a confirmation that the policy which is already in place is against IP, the IP. So it's just like saying since it's against their livelihood, it's in a sense it's a slow obliteration of the IP. That's just my insight from your paper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Last question from Renee.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a nice, interesting talk. I just like to know, can you say what the population of the indigenous Palawan people is today, and how many villages or so are still existing in this region? Any information on this?
Well, as of now, I think there is an estimated 14,000 Palawan people, but there are many groups of Palawan. There are groups from Rizal, from Brooks Point, they're from somewhere in Balabac. But what we have learned is that most of the Palawan people reside in the mountainous regions. We can't give you the exact figures, but we'll follow on that soon. Thank you.
And can I ask, are the other tribes like the Batak also using these techniques, or is it confined to this particular group?
Yes, it is just confined to this particular group. The Bataks are, I think they're using a different type of cut. And we've worked as well with Tagbanwa people from the San Vicente municipality. And they, as I've mentioned by my colleague JL, they're using a tree girdle-like tapping method, which endangers the life of the tree. So there is this existing prejudice when it comes to the sustainability of the tapping cuts that the IP groups make. That's why we're pushing for indigenous knowledge integration so that we will be able to remove that prejudice of indigenous peoples in Palawan.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our colleagues from UPLB for that wonderful presentation. We now move to our next paper titled Meta-Analysis of Indigenous Environmental Wisdom, Synthesizing Local Literature to Eliminate Sustainable Practices in the Cordillera Administrative Region. This will be presented by Chelsea Nicole Bagni of University of the Philippines, Baguio.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good day. Our study is a meta-analysis of indigenous environmental wisdom, synthesizing local literature to illuminate sustainable practices in the Cordillera Administrative Region. These are important keywords in our study, focusing on indigenous environmental wisdom on sustainable practices. The Cordillera Administrative Region faces the challenge of reconciling traditional practices with contemporary development needs, highlighting the need for effective strategies to preserve local ecosystems, protect indigenous knowledge, and promote sustainable livelihoods. With this, having Cordilleran indigenous knowledge of sustainable practices is crucial as it helps document and preserve traditional ecological wisdom, ensuring its transmission to future generations and promoting cultural heritage. Such literature serves as a valuable resource for policymakers, researchers, and practitioners to develop context-specific and culturally sensitive approaches for sustainable development and environmental conservation in the region. The objective of this study is to examine local literature on indigenous environmental friendly practices in CAR with specific objectives, which are to identify the sustainable practices used by indigenous communities in the region and assess the contribution of indigenous knowledge to sustainable resource management, biodiversity conservation, and resilient livelihoods in the region. For the methodology, a meta-analysis was conducted in order to examine the indigenous knowledge of sustainable practices from various literature. The limitations of the study include covering written literature only and reference materials that are available on reputable online research platforms and in these local libraries. Our results and discussions show how the indigenous communities in the region exhibit a range of sustainable practices. They are grouped based on the following categories. To better understand the study, here is a typical community in most provinces of CAR, such as the province of Ifugao. The boble or settlements are found close to each other instead of being interspersed among the muyong or the forests and the payo or the rice fields. The indigenous people in the region have been practicing sustainable terracing and agroforestry practices throughout the years. The muyong, an Ifugao term that we will often see in this paper, has several meanings. First is a watershed that is considered by natives as the best preventive measure against soil erosion and a source of fuel, lumber for wood carving and housing, and food. The Kalinga natives call this imong. Another technique is Sweden farming or shift cultivation, known locally as uma, inuman, and amak. This involves clearing by burning a patch of land. This prescribed burning improves soil fertility and makes it easier for them to shape their mountains into farms. Usually partnered with this is lutang, which involves live fencing using materials from vegetation clearing. Terraces are also built to reduce both the amount and velocity of water moving across the soil surface, which greatly reduces soil erosion. They are constructed using local plants and materials from the environment. They also build riprap walls by lining up stones to protect crops and trees from erosion. Landscaping is also done by the interplanting of perennial and annual crops to sustain the production and integrity of the farm. Several plants are also used by the indigenous people for various purposes. For instance, Albizia procera, locally known as ahlar, adaan kalay, is used as shelter belt for erosion control and forestry planting. Kauyan tinik or Bambusa blumena is used in afforestation activities and stabilization of unstable and eroding slopes and banks. Meanwhile, Erythrina orientalis and Trema orientalis also serve as shade trees for plantation crops. From here, it can be inferred that these terracing and agroforestry techniques maximize land productivity and maximize soil erosion. Next, in every community, water is very important. It is not only for household consumption, but also for irrigation. With this, water management systems have been developed in the region throughout the years. Muyong, as defined here, is a hydrological system that focuses on the delineation of water systems. Meanwhile, guhing is a vernacular for spillways. Tuping and riprap walls are also built for the downward movement of soil and water. All of these structures are evidence of sophisticated water management systems that are being utilized to optimize water distribution and conservation in the region. The Cordillera Administrative Region is rich in natural resources. with forests as one of the main source of livelihood. Therefore, they have developed systems throughout the years to conserve these resources. These terms muyong, lapat, kaewan, or kijowan, and lakon, communal, imong, tayoans, or batangans are practices that control the usage of natural resources such as lumber. It sets the area, time, and species allowed to be taken from the communal forest or from privately owned forests. These practices are also grounded in the principle of stewardship and belief systems that include taboos and karma or cause and effect. In general, these indigenous natural resource management systems seek to protect and sustain the forest, freshwater resources, and the environment for the present and future generations. The indigenous people in the Cordillera Administered Region also have sustainable practices for seed preservation and traditional crop varieties. For one, they use natural fertilizers from various plants, such as sunflowers. They also have weeding discards, or they also use weeding discards for mulching and fermented plants as natural pesticides. They also have various crop management techniques to improve crop yield sustainably. A deep understanding of these sustainable practices on seed preservation and traditional crop varieties is important for agricultural biodiversity. In terms of governance systems, we encounter the term muyong again. In this context, it is a collective management or zoning system and is supervised by the community elders or the landowners. Lapat, and also the term kalasan or kadsan from Benguet, includes a system of regulations or control for the usage of resources. The establishment of these governance systems is rooted in sustainable practices for resource management and community well-being. This also intersect with the belief systems of the community. So for our conclusions, it was observed that literature about indigenous people are intertwined with nature and land conservation, where indigenous beliefs dictate their way of life. Indigenous knowledge plays a crucial role in promoting ecological sustainability, resilience, and cultural preservation in the Cordillera Administrative Region. Local literature emphasizes how indigenous communities' traditional knowledge contributes significantly to sustainable resource management, biodiversity conservation, and resilient livelihoods in the region. By integrating this knowledge into sustainable development efforts, decision-making processes can be informed, cultural heritage can be preserved, and a balanced relationship between communities and their environment can be nurtured. That's our presentation for today, and here are our references. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chelsea Bagni, for this really information-rich presentation. Yes, we open the floor to questions from the rest of our participants. Chelsea, can I ask you to stop sharing so we can
Yes, sir.
see everyone there? Thank you. I guess I'm gonna start the ball rolling by asking about what you plan to do next. You and your team, now that you have gathered a treasure trove of different indigenous practices that are being done or that have been done in various communities. Is there an effort, for example, to see whether these practices have been adopted by local governments, by other communities, just to see if we've learned from from indigenous knowledge? Donna,
I
I think, yeah, we can't hear you.
I believe my teammate in this paper would like to answer the question. So Miss Donna, or
Yeah, we can't. There's no audio coming out.
there's all right. So I'll be the one to answer. So in terms of our plan, so maybe Miss Donna could catch up with the following questions. So first, for our plan, for our future plans in this study, since our research is only focused on written literature, we would want to explore verbal or oral literature, those that are passed down from generation by generation tradition, orally through songs, through stories. We would like to explore that so that our study would be more comprehensive. So, Miss Donna, would you like to answer? Are you
I think
capable?
Donna is typing her answer.
Okay.
Just a follow up to that, Chelsea. Do you personally know of efforts from communities around you that actually still do what you found in the literature in terms of sustainable practices?
Oh yes, definitely. Almost everyone in the Cordillera is still practicing this techniques, though many have already integrated the use of artificial fertilizers and pesticides, that is to increase the crop yield, because here in the Cordillera, the main source of livelihood is agriculture. But they still integrate all the indigenous knowledge regarding agriculture in their farming practices.
That's good to know. Um, and then hopefully again other parts of the country can learn a lesson or two, from what you're doing in the Cordillera region. Yes, Don.
So thank you for your presentation. I noted one of the things that you mentioned in your previous answer was that some of the communities are already using artificial fertilizers, and I believe that other communities and agroecosystems in the Cordillera as well are applying more modern methods. In this context, um, aren't do you see, is there an interaction of this practice in other non-indigenous communities with the indigenous communities? Are they threatened by this kind of practice, or how does it affect the sustainability of continuing their practices?
Okay, so what they do here in the Cordillera is still maintain the traditional practices in farming and integrate modern methods so that they could further increase their production. So in terms of being influenced, so that's an evidence integrating those modern methods. There definitely the farmers here are being influenced, but despite that, they still do not forget the traditional practices, because aside from they are effective and suitable for the topography in this area and the climate in this area, um, it has already been tested to be effective for a couple of years, or tens of years, or hundreds of years even. Um, was I able to answer your question, ma'am, or did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think you answered the question. I'm just gonna, before we move to the next paper, just a quick read of the comment from Chelsea's colleague Donna about in their plans moving forward, and challenges with time management, because even if they're kankanae, they're indigenous themselves, they would still need official papers from NCIP, which is really, yeah, part of bureaucracy, I guess. Um, and then, yeah, so another follow-up answer to the last question. All right, thank you again, Chelsea and Donna, for that presentation. We now move to our next paper, titled Women at the Forefront, Unveiling Stories of Resilience and Innovation in Environmental Leadership. This will be presented by Roselea K. Rivera of University of the Philippines, Diliman.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So you can hear me, no? So
Yes.
my short presentation. Thank you very much for I'm very happy to be here and to listen to the work of my colleagues, you know, in the field of the environment. No, this is really I'm very, very happy to be here. So my short presentation is Women at the Forefront and Unveiling Stories of Resilience and Innovation in Environmental Leadership. So this is a collaborative work with graduate students of my department, Department of Women and Development Studies of the College of Social Work and Community Development in University of the Philippines, Diliman. The rationale of the study is that women, particularly those from the marginalized groups, are among the most vulnerable to the triple crisis due to societal gender roles and norms. This vulnerability stems from discriminatory practices and the under-evaluation or invisibility of their contributions, which are often perceived as natural extension of their socialized roles as caregivers and nurturers. However, women's unique perspective, shaped by their experiences in managing households, families, and extensive community networks, position them to play a crucial role in building climate resilience and promoting sustainable environmental initiatives. This research aims to highlight the lived experiences of women environmental leaders and their distinct style of leadership, which emphasizes community engagement and collaboration. By exploring the challenges they encounter on the ground, as well as their best practices and successes within their respective sectors, this study seeks to shed light on their valuable contributions. Additionally, the research intends to challenge the prevailing discrimination faced by women when their agency is undermined or their voices are silenced. No, ano rin ako dun sa what was shared that the women are not allowed in the field of resin harvesting. No, that's one example as a tradition, as a tradition which I question, is this sound? By amplifying the voices and experience of women environmental leaders, this research aims to recognize their leadership potential, facilitate knowledge exchange, and advocate for gender-inclusive policies and practices. So, so the research objective is to explore and elevate their narratives, the narratives and achievement of Filipino women environmental leaders, including Indigenous women activists and community leaders, shedding light on their experiences at the intersections of gender equality, environmental justice, and climate change. So, with this research objective, the research questions which I asked together with the team from the Women, Gender, and Environment team are: what are the politics, practices, and processes employed by women environmental leaders in their environmental work, and how do these factors shape their approaches and strategies? How do these politics, practices, and processes intersect with prevailing gender norms and expectations, influencing the experiences and challenges faced by women environmental leaders? What are the implications of these dynamics on how women environmental leaders navigate their respective sectors? And how do they navigate and overcome barriers and biases in pursuit of their environmental goals? So the conceptual framework of the study is employing the concept of feminist standpoint epistemology, intersectionality, and environmental justice to underscore the following. One is the value of knowledge building based on sociocultural and economic context of women, environmental leaders across the following areas: in agroecology, indigenous communities, community-powered initiatives, and policy and development. Two is gender and environmental justice are social justice issues that must be addressed holistically from both top-down policy change and bottom-up community-driven action. So the data gathering methods is, since the conceptual framework is already in terms of non-extractive research, participatory approach, and with the concept of feminist standpoint, epistemology, intersectionality, environmental justice, the data gathering we use is, we have 15 key informant interviews. And then with this, we had thematic analysis of these key informant interviews. And then we are very specific that we are disseminating the findings through a zine, or this is short for magazine, and documentary, a short video documentary to reach a wider audience. I'll put my address, email address in the chat box because we don't have time to play this this short documentary which the team made, no, and the zine. I would gladly share this with you. Okay, so I don't think I also have time anymore to share the vignettes, but these are the fields, no, in policy development, agroecology, indigenous women leaders. So just let me read some of the quotes from the vignettes and the film, which the short video, which I'd gladly share with you. Not now, no. Okay, let me read some of the quotes from our. Okay. Isama ang mga babae sa pa-training at pag-aalaga ng hayop. Kasi minsan mas nurturing ang mga babae. If may pa-training na kasama yung mga babae, baka mas maalagaan ng maigi ang mga hayop, pang livelihood, hindi lang sa weaving. So for those who can't understand English, they say that most of the time, women are not included in trainings or related to animals, no? It's usually only in weaving. And then another of the informants said that they're mas willing mag-participate ang mga babae sa community activities. Kaso, women participate more in community activities, but they hindered sila ng mga reproductive roles na kailangan nilang gampanan. They are hindered by the domestic chores that they have to do. So it's important to conduct a gender needs assessment when they're having development projects in the communities so that these kind of issues would be considered. Okay, another quote is, dapat holistic yung approach ng projects in general in addressing women's issues. For example, they should look at the perspective of all will be empowered. For the women, because they are not involved in physical activities, they should also be efforts that the activities and work they are able to participate. So here they're talking about the recognition of the value of reproductive work or care work, no? Yung mga training, hindi lang dapat pinapa-attend yung mga babae dahil hindi available yung mga asawa nila. Kung hindi, ine-extend din sa kanila yung participation para kasama sila sa usapan. So this leader was saying that women should also be allowed to attend, and not only because they are the wives of the farmers. Then another. In discussing gender, context is very important. I always emphasize on that. There are more opportunities to maximize women's benefits, especially in rural development than most sectors, because women comprise unpaid work, and gender studies are important, even as simple as a desk review, so that these issues won't be missed in crafting a development initiative. And my last quote is, consultation with the community should be a repetitive process or a series of focus group discussions among stakeholders. Then the local government units will give support service. intersect and compound each other allows for more comprehensive approaches to address the challenges at hand. The
Dr.
government,
Sel, sorry, your time is almost up. Can you?
yes, this is already the last slide.
Thank you.
The government, as the primary duty bearer, bears a significant responsibility in supporting facilitating policy development and ensuring the provision of services through relevant government agencies. Collaboration with communities and empowering grassroots efforts are integral to the success of environmental initiatives. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Russell, for that beautiful presentation. We already have our first comment from Dawn, mainly echoing a concern that was brought up by the study. It's mostly women in the study of Dawn who are more willing to participate and share their stories. There's a possible bias in participant sampling because the men don't want to be interviewed, even if they also do gleaning. And the community assistant is also a woman. All right. Can we have one question from the group about the research done by Dr. Rivera and her colleagues? Quick question, Dr. Sel. I'm not sure if I missed it, but in your theoretical section, was there a conscious mention of ecofeminism?
We use more environmental justice. No,
I see.
because there are so many debates with the use of ecofeminism.
Yes, yes.
We don't want to get into that discourse.
I know. Yeah, but I also understand that obviously intersectionality can already incorporate those issues of ecology and feminist issues. But right, other questions or comments for Dr. Rivera? All right. If no questions, we can move to our last paper. I will tell you something about Pangal, Indigenous Oceanic Knowledge, Climate Change, and Applied Theater, presented by Dr. Dennis Gupa of University of Winnipeg.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're fine.
Thank you. And you see the slide?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just play it from the start. Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to share with you my presentation from the Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and the Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. Thanks to the ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture and Ateneo University for organizing this timely conference. As an artist, I am glad that I was given an opportunity to share my work with you. There's a growing community of artists here in Canada that are thinking on how the field can delimit the wastes in theatrical production. And I bring a practice of performance making informed by ethical response to climate change that deploys sustainable theatrical production. As I continue to engage in a scholarly and artistic inquiry that intersects with applied theater, climate change, and Indigenous ecological knowledge, I think of possible world making that we can all aspire together. My practice of thinking, doing, and circulating theater is applied theater, which is rooted from the imagination and lived experiences of peripheralized communities. Over the years, I have co-created theater projects with public school teachers, incarcerated women, children and youth in conflict, scientists, and fishers in island communities. Although the prominence of stories of loss and trauma from many disasters are overwhelming, I would like to respond to a tender invitation for thinking beyond tragedy into a possible future. But it is critical to remember the context. Climate change in island communities in the Philippines is being experienced intensely. Due to the warming waters of the Pacific, the country has been receiving the attacks of strong weather events, like Super Typhoon Yolanda. You may recall that Yolanda is the deadliest typhoon ever recorded to visit the Philippines. It hit on November 8, 2013. It devastated provinces in the central Philippines, leaving many communities flattened. The typhoon's strong winds lifted the seawater of the Pacific Ocean that engulfed many coastal communities. The result was more than 6,000 casualties, the displacement of 4.1 million people, and almost 6 billion of damage in properties. I began to make an assumption in my research that the lack of disaster research management and context-specific adaptation models affect the lives of many Filipinos. For example, the term storm surge used by the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration to forewarn the people of Yolanda's disastrous events created a false impression to local community members. I have had many conversations with local community members in Tacloban and in Eastern Samar around their misunderstanding of the word. Consequently, the technical meaning of the term did not fit to locals' understanding of what a typhoon is. Thus, it resulted in a massive loss of lives. This kind of discrepancy in disaster risk adaptation determines the significance of indigenization of climate mitigation, adaptation, and disaster risk management. Top-down approach in government policies erase local knowledge and displaces the agency of community members. The challenge is to continue in innovating climate change adaptation models, paradigms, and the processes of humanitarian development that recenters the embodied experiences, narratives of people, and their local culture. Local elders in island communities have developed indigenous ecological knowledge and ways of knowing that are relevant to the practice of stewardship and environmental sustainability. Their indigenous ways of knowing and practices are considered out of date, passé, and obsolete. Therefore, local ways of knowing in ecological stewardship are peripheralized in climate change adaptation policies and dialogues. While there is a growing body of knowledge on applied theater within development studies, applying theater to climate justice work in island communities that directly receive the brunt of climate change, climate crisis has to be introduced. And the practical and ethical concerns in mobilizing applied theater in these communities has to be established. To what extent can applied theater foreground and articulate indigenous ways of knowing within the discussions on climate change? I am asking this question because I aim to problematize the erasure of indigenous ecological knowledge in climate change dialogues. This question is relevant to our situation in the Philippines, where political, economic, and social marginalizations are happening in different levels of our society. I would like to argue that local community members who have experienced the impact of climate change have a self-generating system of creativity that is attuned with their ecology, and they are able to mobilize social cohesion in the aftermath of disaster. There is a discrepancy of power in climate justice work, and this discrepancy can be attributed to the narratives of vulnerability, precarity, and victimhood. This creativity sustains the local, cultural, and religious lives of community members in island provinces amid strong weather events. This argument afforded me to formulate a practice of theater that we can apply for post-disaster response in island communities by engaging directly to people's imagination, culture, and local ecological knowledge. Let me share with you this fishing tradition known as panggal, or a method of catching fish that uses a fishing trap, also called panggal. I contend that panggal illustrates ethnomathematics, practical innovation, and local creativity. According to my informants, Tatay Frank and Tatay Duning, the fishers of Tobago Island knew about the existence of this fishing contraption that was being used in Surigao, a neighboring island. The first set of this fishing device came to their village after a typhoon. Curious to learn how these devices were crafted, the fishers began collecting these fishing contraptions washed onto their seashores. The fishers began dismantling the strands carefully and reassembling them to their original structure. These fishers made me think of how knowledge and creativity can grow and evolve with visiting disasters. One morning, I saw how Tatay Frank crafted his panggal. I observed the dexterity of his hands as they move with strength and precision while weaving the stiff bamboo strands. Tatay Frank and Tatay Duning told me that there are 6 steps in making this device. They are pagpulod, utod-utod, buka-buka, pagnawi, pagpaluoy, larahon, matunod. And so how this panggal used as a fishing trap? Panggal are released into the sea without any surface buoy to mark their location. Their positions are noted by triangulating between 2 terrestrial landmarks that the fishers call tigaman. After a week or 2, the panggal are recovered by the fishers who use the landmarks to locate the original drop position, as shown in this slide. Here you would see the indigenous practice of geospatiality embedded in panggal fishing. Through this fishing tradition, I conceptualized a performance method of creating community-based theater performances informed by the process of crafting a panggal. I borrowed the process of creating a panggal into a method of scaffolding our community-based theater performance to develop a deeper appreciation of local marine culture while examining the impact of climate crisis in the community. Such a performance method that draws on local ocean knowledge contributes to the practice of applied theater as post-disaster response. In this practice, we apply theater that deploys people's creativity, identity, culture, and dealing with local climate issues. Nora Quizon, a school teacher from Giwan who participated in our applied theater workshop, shares about this practice of applying theater to issues around climate injustice. She says, inside the classroom, I have these students who can learn from me only if those students do the same thing that I did just now. For example, by looking at the sea, I ask myself, can this ocean speak? Because I know in the depths of this ocean, there are many creatures who speak to each other. For Quizon, the process of applied theater's creative exploration can unleash the imagination of her students only if she herself experiences the process first. Creativity through applied theater's experiential process allows critical empathy and expansion of relationship beyond the human. Do I still have time, Guilty?
You have 30 seconds left.
Okay, I wish to conclude this presentation by envisioning a theater that seeks social responsibility and global solidarity in tackling climate injustice. Let me show to you this very short video that if the imperative is to care for the planet, I think of applied theater as a global practice of imagination, compassion, and relationality that builds international cooperation and solidarity that has an enduring impact for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis Gupa, for that really engrossing presentation. Questions, please, from everyone in the room. Yes, Dawn.
Hello, thank you for the very interesting presentation. I wanted to know a bit more. Perhaps you could elaborate a bit more on how the practice of your applied theater reflects or parallels the process of creating a panggal. If I understand the concept right.
Yeah, I'm educated firstly with a very Western theater making, and when I did my research in the community, wanting to organize this community to create stories about climate change in their community, I was thinking what would be the most ethical way of engaging with their creativity while without imposing my very Western way or practice of doing theater. In Western theater, we have rehearsal, textual, text is very much privileged. And in this community, where they really rely on oral tradition, how do we negotiate with that? So in my interaction with the local elders, I observe their creative power, their creativity, their imagination of crafting panggal, and I thought that it might be productive to pick up that creative, natural creative power and use that as an imaginative method in building the practice of applied theater. So it's really about thinking rootedness and contextualizing the practice and sensing the creativity in the local community without imposing our own practice, which is very much Western.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you, Don.
Other questions? Dennis, I'm just curious about your origins in the Philippines. Are you originally from Samar, or was the research really a result of the post-Haiyan efforts to help those who were traumatized in the locality?
I'm happy that you're asking that, Skill T. My father is from Eastern Samar, and I really wanted to connect with my father. But the temptation was to go to other provinces, right? And initially, I wanted to go to Batanes and in Mindanao, but then again, my interaction with my father told me that if you want stories of typhoon, go back to our hometown. So I did. And Dada Ducot, this anthropologist, wrote something about anthropology of hometown, and to decolonize and to also find an ethical way of engaging with our research, we have to go back to our own origins and our hometown. But the challenge for me, I do not speak the language, and I grew up in Manila. So that was also interesting for me, and to reflect on how I decolonize the tendency for extraction, and the very fact that we're writing our research in English. I thought that's also problematic, isn't it? So there's more to reflecting about going to our own hometown and doing research.
Thank you. What's important is that you were very aware of your positionality as an outsider, even if you have roots in Samar. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. If there are no more questions from the body, we can proceed to closing this very interesting, informative, productive session. As we've seen from the 8 papers, it bears without saying that we have a treasure trove of indigenous knowledge that sadly have been left untapped. So there's we as researchers, because we see these things happening, we feel the responsibility of making these indigenous knowledge and practices more known, more respected by decision makers, by those who are in power, so that not only for 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 nostalgia's sake or for the sake of tradition, but because we believe that they're actually the better option, uh, knowing the challenges that we face in the present world. So I'm sure everyone has learned a lot from this session. We thank you for joining this particular session. I think some of the people in this room joined us from other sessions that finished earlier. But I think, Rael, is there some announcements that I need to make from the slides before we proceed to the photo op? Or maybe we can start with that. Can if you're comfortable opening your cameras, we will have our usual photo shoot. Just hold your smile for about 20 seconds because I think there are two panels just to make sure that everyone is smiling while the cameras are being ready.
All right, just kindly open your cameras. Okay, there are two panels, so we'll take it separately. Okay. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, actually, there's only one panel. I think that's fine.
Right. Thank you so much. It's nice to see these beautiful smiles. Yeah, thank you for joining this session. I hope you all have a great day.
We have some videos to play, I think, before.
Oh, okay. Yes, please stay for the videos, and I think you need to evaluate the assessment of the session, the conference.
We're excited to share with you about Baliktarin Mo, a youth-led movement for climate justice using the arts. Baliktarin Mo is the local adaptation of Turn It Around flashcards for education futures, a global initiative that creates a card deck which showcases what change do youth hope to see in environmental policy and education. Each card contains an artwork on one side and text on the other. Last year, Turn It Around Southeast Asian Edition was jointly organized by the Artist Literacies Institute, the Arizona State University, UNESCO's Future of Education Initiative, and AUN-EEC, hosted by the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability. This year, AUN-EEC, housed at the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability and with various departments and units of Ateneo de Manila University, as reported by the Sandbox Residency Program of Arete Ateneo, are all organizing Baliktarin Mo, the Philippine adaptation of Turn It Around. Anyone from the Philippines under the age of 30 who has attended any activity of AUN-EEC, the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, and Baliktarin Mo partner institutions may participate by submitting an artwork and/or a piece of writing. The process of participation has 3 phases: experience, reflection, and action. Participants will first undergo an immersive learning experience conducted by a Baliktarin Mo partner institutions. These are activities such as nature or sustainability walks, AUN-EEC workshops, Sustainable Development Solutions Network webinars, roundtable discussions, research projects, and field trips by the Biological Organization of Ateneo Senior High School. And then, based on the attended activity, participants are invited to reflect on our current environmental reality and consider whether the activity led to challenged or reinforced beliefs, guided new ways of understanding the world, evoked emotional responses, realized future action, or led to the articulation of future hopes and dreams. And then from these reflections, create artworks or written pieces. Artworks must answer any of the prompts flashed on the screen. Here are some examples of artworks from the Turn It Around website. Submissions may also be in the form of written pieces that answer any of the prompts flashed on screen. Here are some examples from Turn It Around. But submissions are not limited to artworks and written pieces. Participants are invited to submit outputs that promote climate action and/or environmental conservation using any medium that they feel can communicate best their sentiment. Remember that our goal is to capture the voice and dreams of the Filipino youth for our environment, to focus on your own insights and your own reflections and let your own voice be heard. Selected submissions will be displayed in Arite's Sandbox exhibit by the end of 2023. The final deck of cards will be distributed to selected schools for use in their classroom and to policymakers and other institutional leaders in conferences and gatherings. Submissions are accepted until September 30, 2023 through go.ateneo.edu/baliktarinmo submissions. The full mechanics are also accessible through the link and the QR code flashed on screen. Thank you, and we look forward to your submissions.
Right, that's a video for Baliktarin Mo. I wear another hat as the Sandbox coordinator for Arete, so I fully support
Good
your
afternoon,
participation.
everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you find our conference enjoyable and insightful. On behalf of the AUN-EEC Conference Secretariat, we would like to thank you for joining us in our fourth AUN-EEC Conference on Ecological Education and Culture. In the plenary session this morning, our moderator, Dr. Nikki Carcy Cruz, shared that the banner theme of AUN this year is Environmental Restoration and Reconciliation. Earlier this year, we learned about the sad state of the environment and ecological education in Southeast Asia. Following that, this conference sought to explore a way of proceeding that is favorable to our environment, despite our varied contexts, which is reconciliation ecology. We hope that through the keynote lectures this morning, you had some appreciation of the framework, demonstrating that biodiversity and nature can thrive in human-dominated landscapes. But this is not automatic. It calls for harnessing our technical knowledge, the rich intangible heritage and indigenous wisdom, personal and community experiences, and even technological means to spread this awareness. The panel discussion highlighted some similarities and differences on how reconciliation ecology can be translated in different communities. In any case, it entails a multidimensional thinking and requires consideration of the local knowledge. Meanwhile, the session this afternoon caters to your own personal interest. Through the 4 sessions, we hope you had some appreciation of the diversity of ways on how we can advance ecological education and reconciliation ecology. Moving forward, we hope you can reflect how reconciliation ecology can be demonstrated in your own context. Special thanks to Mr. Skilty Labastillas for moderating the session, and to Mr. Voltaire Banzon for providing technical support this afternoon. As we end this conference, we hope to see you in our upcoming events, including the workshop later this year, which will guide us further to see how reconciliation ecology can be communicated and applied to our individual context. Even though we learned a lot from today's online session, we hope also to maintain your participation as we prepare for some on-site activities involving our member institutions across Southeast Asia. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks again. Thanks everyone. If you haven't filled out the registration, the evaluation form, it's in the chat box. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Salamat po. Bye-bye.